Right now, we're joined by Dan Conkle, a professor of law emeritus at IU's Maurer School of Law. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks so much for being here. So much to talk about. Two-part question I want to start with right away, though. What do you make of the university seemingly changing its free speech policy the night before the event, but also seemingly targeting it to a specific event?
Well, that's the potential problem the university faces from a First Amendment standpoint. The university would be free, if it did so without regard to content, to prospectively impose a rule such as no structures, no tents. The problem here, as your question suggests, is that the university, by the admission of the president, specifically was concerned about this protest, which at least raises the possibility that it could be challenged, that the new policy could be challenged as being based on the viewpoint or the content of the protest, which would be highly problematic. One other problem with the newly adopted last-minute change in policy is that by every indication it does not contain specified criteria for the permitting of such structures, which the new policy purports to permit. The Constitution would require specification of criteria that are not based on content, and it doesn't seem to do that.
So there were nearly 36 arrests yesterday, many given trespass violations, also ordered to stay off campus for a year. Is there any precedent for that?
I don't know if there's precedent for it, but in my view, those trespass notices should be unenforceable. In other words, as to IU affiliated personnel, faculty on the one hand, students on the other, those notices are tantamount to a one-year suspension, maybe under an unconstitutional law that gives rise to the trespass prosecutions in the first place, without any notice, without any due process. In my view, that is rather plainly unconstitutional. As to unaffiliated, those unaffiliated with IU, these kinds of trespass notices have been done in the past, and they raise much less significant issues.
So we're seeing this unfold across the country at other universities. Are other universities doing similar to IU?
I think to some extent, the University of Texas had a clear-out situation with police. I don't know, but in my history at IU, for sure, the idea of heavily armed police with assault weapons removing protesters and tents based on, even if it is a violation of a lawful tent policy, to me is truly extraordinary, an overreach by the university, and I hope the decision makers, in fact, can try to defend this based on the claims of safety concerns. Why you would go after tents if there is a serious threat of a safety problem, I think would have to be explained to me. I'm not quite sure how that logic works.
Okay, one more question. So what happens now? Do you expect the trustees to get involved?
I hope they do. They may have already been involved. I don't know whether President Whitten acted on her own, whether this was with the authority and approval of the trustees. I understand that there has been a suggestion that the trustees ought to, in fact, authorize an independent investigation of this episode to see what happened, what the rationale was, and whether or not this type of episode should be prevented in the future. I just walked over here. There are more tents right now in Dunn Meadow. Will the police be back later today to do the same thing? I worry about that.
Professor, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe.